Well, I want to welcome everyone. This is session T1 entitled Teaching and Researching Writing Within and Beyond the Curriculum, One University's Initiatives to Encourage Faculty Collaboration and Further Writing Transfer Research. We are lucky enough to be joined by 4 educators from Elon University today. The chair is Paula Rosinski. I'm not sure, I didn't.
Perfect.
Okay, really? Oh, that's impressive. Okay. So I'm going to transfer it over to Paula. My name is Jessie McLean. I'm one of the associate directors here. If you need anything throughout the conference, feel free to reach out. And without further ado, Paula, take it away.
Great. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're really happy to see you and that this conference is happening. Yay. I'm Paula Rosinski, and I'm a faculty member at Elon University, and I'm an English professor, and I also direct Writing Across the University. And my colleagues presenting with me today are also from Elon University. I think we'll introduce ourselves a little bit more in detail when we are presenting. But with that, I'm going to pass it right over to Julia Bleakney.
Hi everyone, I'm Julia Bleakney. I am in the Writing Center at Elon University within the Center for Writing Excellence, and also an assistant professor of English. And I would like to read the land acknowledgement to get us started. So Colorado State University acknowledges with respect that the land we are on today is the traditional and ancestral homes of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations and peoples. This was also a site of trade, gathering, and healing for numerous other Native tribes. We recognize the Indigenous peoples as original stewards of this land and all the relatives within it. As these words of acknowledgement are spoken and heard, the ties nations have to their traditional homelands are renewed and reaffirmed.
Thank you, Julia. Okay, I'm going to briefly give you our agenda today. First, we're going to talk a bit about the Elon University context, really briefly, but of course, when you do initiatives like this and programming, context matters. So we want you to know where we're coming from in the hopes that it would help you think about how you might adjust such procedures or programming or initiatives for your own context. But the bulk of our discussion will be talking about campus and cross-institutional programs and initiatives that focus on teaching and researching writing as a high impact practice. So we'll talk about the Center for Writing Excellence, which includes the Writing Across the University program that I direct and the Writing Center that Julia directs. We'll talk about the Disciplinary Writing Consultants program that Julia and I both help run, and that Mike Carignan, the one history professor here, not a writing person, has participated in. And then Jessie Moore will talk about the Center for Engaged Learning, which has lots of connections with all of our work. And then we'll leave time for reflection and discussion.
So a little bit about Elon's university, the context of Elon University. We are a medium-sized doctoral professional institution in, I guess I would say, rural North Carolina, in between Greensboro and Chapel Hill, Durham area. We're primarily undergraduate with some selected graduate and professional programs. The latest census shows 6,300 undergraduate students and about 800 graduate students. And to the point of this presentation, Elon really does foster a range of campus cross-institutional programs and initiatives that are focused on teaching and researching writing as a high impact practice. And we're going to be talking about primarily two of those today. But in each of those programs, there's interdisciplinary work with faculty, teachers, and researchers who are innovating around areas of writing instruction, research, and writing practice. And also faculty and staff working together on a range of these programs and initiatives, which we'll talk more about as we get into some of the details.
So the Center for Writing Excellence supports faculty, students, and staff to engage in pedagogical writing innovations and writing research. And it was created in 2014 as part of our Writing Excellence Initiative, which was our QEP for SACS accreditation, which is how Southern schools are accredited. And we aimed with that initiative to transform the culture of writing on our campus. It technically lasted from 2013 to 2018. So while it's officially over, all of that work and all the infrastructure we built to encourage, the teaching and learning and practice of writing on campus still exists and continue to grow. And the CWE, I think, as I've already mentioned, includes the Writing Across the University program and the Writing Center. So here's an image just to really quickly kind of show you the goals of our Writing Excellence Initiative, because that really was kind of the foundation of a lot of what's happened in the Center for Writing Excellence. And so we aimed by the time of graduation that every Elon University student would be prepared to write to learn, write in a discipline and or profession, and to write as a citizen. And these outcomes, we aim to make writing one of the major signature experiences of an Elon education. And there were 4 primary actors who were supposed to do this work of the Writing Excellence Initiative. And so one was the academic departments and the majors. So we worked with faculty to develop writing outcomes for every single major on campus over the 5 years. I can talk at great length about how we did that, but I won't talk about it here. But if anybody's curious, let me know and I can share materials. So every department, every major wrote outcomes by the point of graduation. Students would be able to do this with writing and have these strengths with writing, and then built in that support throughout the 4 years. The core curriculum also wrote writing outcomes, and that's really general education. And then student life also wrote writing outcomes. So one thing we'd want to emphasize here is our work is not just with faculty and academics, it's also student life and those kind of co-curricular experiences. And then the Center for Writing Excellence was the workhorse, helping all these different people across campus do this work. So you can start to see all the connections and collaborations and partnerships between students, faculty, and staff. And here's another nice image. I won't go into too much detail, but we have the Center for Writing Excellence in the middle here. And on the left-hand side, you can see our focus on teaching and mentoring. And so what I think we'll focus on today is the Disciplinary Writing Consultants Program, and also the Writing Pedagogy grants for faculty to encourage them to enhance their writing pedagogy. And then on the right-hand side, the focus on research and writing. And I believe what we'll focus on today are the grants for writing research for faculty, the Summer Writing Institute for faculty and staff, and also workshops for faculty and staff. Okay, finally, too much text, but this is what really focused for my part of the presentation here are the partnerships and collaborations that develop spurred on by the Writing Across the University pedagogy grants. So faculty and teaching staff can write a pedagogy grant to focus on something about writing pedagogy in their class. And it really could be anything. It could be, you know, I want to add in more peer response, or I think my writing assignments are weak. It could be to incorporate more multimedia or visual writing assignments, really anything. And I like to talk about this as just kind of flat out bribery, to encourage faculty across the disciplines to improve their writing pedagogy. And so I'll work with faculty to help develop these pedagogy grants, and they can be written by one person or up to a group of 4, and each faculty member gets a stipend for that. And what I presented here are only the pedagogy grants that ended up becoming faculty development workshops. So this is another example of how the partnerships and collaborations across campus. So faculty can write these grants individually or as a group, but here's an example of faculty across the disciplines who also wanted to go further and share what they learned about writing pedagogy with faculty across the disciplines. So what I'd like to highlight here is the great diversity of faculty who participated and wanted to develop a faculty development workshop for their peers. We have podcasting as multimodal writing from one faculty member in arts administration, teaching students to convey complex scientific content to a non-expert audience, writing letters home. This was 3 faculty members, and they're actually continuing this work, and I think they might be writing a research grant soon. We have something about visual writing and data design from a professional writing colleague, a philosophy professor who, for his pedagogy grant, developed a project where he was writing in tandem with his students, and then he presented this material to his colleagues across the university so they could do the similar things in their own disciplines. Math professors have presented workshops to their colleagues. We have an alternative grading workshop coming up this fall with a history and 2 art history professors, and also a writing to learn workshop from a biology professor. The other disciplines I have listed here on the right-hand side, those are from disciplines that faculty wrote the pedagogy grants. They didn't offer a workshop, but I wanted you to see the great variety of disciplines that are represented. And when they do present, we almost always have faculty from across the disciplines. It's not just their own peers from their own departments who are attending. And then we do know from, this is kind of old data, but in 2018, we knew that 79% of departments had participants that had attended a WAU workshop. So we feel pretty good that we're getting faculty across the disciplines talking about teaching writing. So that's great. And then my next major slide, get it to work, is about partnerships and collaborations that resulted from the pedagogy grants that we also offer in the Center for Writing Excellence. I said that wrong. I'm sorry, research grants. And so these research grants are for faculty in the disciplines not writing related. So Julia can't apply for this, Jessie can't apply for this, I can't, but Mike could because it's history. And this is to encourage faculty in other disciplines to research writing. And it could be anything. It could be their own pedagogy. It could be writing in their discipline or profession. It could be writing about something about their own teaching and student writing. And so some examples include faculty from sociology and anthropology. A faculty member is doing research this summer on assessing the effects of multimodal writing in a first-year STEM course. And this faculty member will present a workshop in the spring. So one thing I want to highlight is that these pedagogy grants have opened up opportunities for faculty to talk with their peers in their own departments, but also peers across the university, especially then when they offer a workshop. And we also have faculty from psychology and communications who've applied for and received and completed the writing research grants. And some of these faculty are really starting to now consider publication. And I think that after the Writing Excellence Initiative, the pedagogy grants got popular quicker, and now I'm starting to see the research grants pick up. And then one last bit from me, and this was just some other examples of partnerships and collaborations. We have a summer writing institute that Julia and I offer together, and we always have a large group of very diverse faculty where they talk about their writing assignments and improve them, but they really learn from each other that they don't talk about writing in the same way, and they don't think effective writing is the same in all their disciplines. So it's really valuable for faculty to hear that from one another. I'm working on an inclusive writing pedagogy workshop with our Office of Inclusive Excellence for the fall. We also offer interdisciplinary writing groups and online writing boot camps that have been really popular. And we said in our proposal would talk about challenges. So I'd say initiative overload. Elon has lots of initiatives, so you can only do so much. In time, everybody's short on time. And also showing new faculty the value of this programming because, they're always new. And so they don't know, which is fine, but you always have to, re-educate and share that information. So I will pass it out, I believe, to Julia. Is that correct?
Sorry, just unmuting myself there. So I am going to talk a little bit about the model for how the Writing Center collaborates and partners with other offices and programs on campus with maybe a little bit of a different goal, although definitely connected to the overarching goal of the Writing Excellence Initiative, which is to support students and then to support faculty and staff as they support students with the students' writing projects. So it's like a layered supporting effect, if you will. So through outreach to faculty and staff and through the working partnerships, the goal is really to help faculty integrate Writing Center support into their classes, and probably just as importantly to understand, to help them understand and to help students understand the purpose of the Writing Center, what we do and what we don't do. And this is going to be familiar to any of you who work in writing centers, but in our writing centers, students are trained to work, the consultants are trained to work collaboratively with students to facilitate students' learning and revision processes and to focus on all aspects of the writing process. So we aren't limited to certain things like grammar and citations, although we do see those things. And we want to work with every student, not only the students that are identified as struggling in some way. So the point I'm making about this is that spreading the word about what we do is the ongoing work that I'm involved with, the consultants who work in the Writing Center involved with, and building collaborative partnerships really helps with this outreach and this kind of ongoing messaging. One of the ways we do this is sort of serendipitously in terms of our location. So the Writing Center, the Center for Writing Excellence, and Paula's area, Writing Across the University, we're all physically located in the library. The library itself has an open door feel, although, or an open wall feel, although COVID has changed that a little bit, and that consulting was driven into private rooms. But our typical approach is for consulting to be happening right in the open, in the main library space. And this helps make writing visible on campus and has fostered informal conversations with our library partners, including librarians, folks from learning assistants, disability resources, et cetera. And those conversations have led to collaborations. So one example of this is a year-long collaboration with other directors in the library as we considered how to welcome in a new physical wing to the library, which would house the new learning center and disability resources called the Königsberger Learning Center. Over the years, since I've been director of the Writing Center, I've worked to build these partnerships. Some were already in place and built into the Writing Excellence Initiative, and others have emerged as opportunities have presented. And some collaborations are short-lived and some are ongoing. And I think that's an important element of collaborations, that some last as long as they need to last and then they end, and some are ongoing. But all of them have involved things like planning special events, developing resources, sharing information, working with each other's student staff, and in each case, kind of building on and sharing expertise across programs and with each other. And an example of that might be with disability resources. We've really thought about how writing expertise and pedagogy might enhance the work that their student staff do when they work with students who have disability accommodations. And then we're thinking of, in the kind of vice versa, how the expertise and experiences from disability resources can improve Writing Center consulting. Paula, next slide, please. So two collaborations that I want to focus on are with the Office of Learning Assistance, which is in Königsberger Learning Center, and also the undergraduate research program. The collaboration with learning assistants initially emerged from a need to respond to the university's request for additional resources for students during COVID pandemic. And we realized quickly that working together, we might be able to do more than we could do independently. And we knew what we were doing was doing more than what we had done before. So we figured it would be useful to work together. The result was a series of workshops and other resources that focused on the overlap between learning assistance area, which were focusing on study skills and student success in that area, and writing. So for example, we did a workshop on working effectively with groups and on group projects, including writing as a group, and another workshop on time management that focused on time management related to studying, as well as time management when you're working on kind of a larger writing project. The collaboration with undergraduate research program was built into the Writing Excellence Initiative and had been ongoing for many years. This past year, we really doubled down on it, probably offered about double the amount of workshops that we had in previous years, again, in response to requests to provide additional resources during COVID times. But each year we offer workshops to undergraduate research who are conducting independent research, topics such as writing an abstract for NCUR, National Conference in Undergraduate Research, or things like poster design. Both collaborations really aim to complement the support that faculty are providing to students in their classes and through mentored research, and also to bring students from across academic disciplines together. So in any one workshop, we'll see students, so for example, the poster design workshop, we'll see students from the sciences, from the social sciences, from the humanities areas. And also to really, another goal is really to help create equitable access for student success by making these workshops available to everyone and helping students learn some of the basic ways to be successful as a student and to write in these new contexts and new genres. Paula, next slide, please. So the partnerships between the Writing Center and other programs and offices really mutually enhance our work. They increase the visibility of writing across campus. They bring evidence-based writing-related initiatives to more areas of campus, and they enhance the writing, or we hope they enhance the writing, but we also have evidence for this, that students, staff, and faculty do for a variety of purposes. And they also enrich my own personal work every day. They help me build relationships with colleagues across campus. And, we just get more work done when we work together. So there's a real sort of practical benefit to it also. I think I'm passing on to Mike now, who's going to speak a little bit about the disciplinary writing program.
Hi, everybody. In some ways, I feel like the animal at the zoo in the cage that some of you might be interested in hearing about some of my experiences as non-writing faculty. Thanks, Paula, at least you're laughing at my joke. I've been a long adherent of the Writing Center, been using its resources ever since I started teaching at a university that had a Writing Center, which is coming up on 20 years now. I've used it mostly as a way of having a kind of reinforcement for what I would consider somewhat conventional writing expectations for my history courses, which tend to emphasize thesis-driven essays that interpret the past using evidence from the past, and sometimes also using help from present historians and things like that. And so I'm in keeping with the way my colleagues in the department think about the centrality of writing in our discipline. And so Paula mentioned at the top that we had a QEP a few years ago, and our department was sort of ready to, yes, we are ready to articulate our writing goals. And we appreciated the help to kind of assess, or to build assessment tools for that kind of thing. But what I'm trying to say about that is that the writing expectations in my course wouldn't surprise too many people who are familiar with that sort of writing. And I was happy to use Writing Center consultants to help my students think about the process of writing and think about the stages in developing highly polished, I guess we would call them high stakes writing assignments, something like that. And so because writing is so central to our discipline, I like to think of it as one of the topics of all of my history courses. I devote time to talking about writing in my courses, and I'll talk about one of the things that I do called a writing workshop that I use in the run-up to the submission of some of these high stakes essays. But as I say in the bullet here, this skill, as you all know, takes practice and it takes feedback. And so having Writing Center consultants participate in that process just creates more feedback loops and a better opportunity for students to learn. So I've always been an endorser of using that. And that's why when the Disciplinary Writing Center program came online, I was eager to participate because it gave me an opportunity to collaborate with the consultants who were trained in Writing Center practice, but I could also groom them in a way to my own sense of expectations so that they could maybe see themselves as, I don't know, more authoritative or better, at least better understanding my expectations as a way of helping students work on their writing in ways that brought them closer to my highest goals for them. Right. So in terms of the benefits and challenges, it's almost all benefits. I threw in a challenge there at the end. I think it's an interesting one, but I didn't have to put it in, but I'll be interested to hear if there are questions about it. I've done the Disciplinary Writing Consultants program, I think 5 times. I did it in the pilot year with 2 highly experienced and well-trained writing consultants. And then one of those 2 worked with me in a subsequent semester for my second iteration. And then I had 2 more years with another trained writing consultant who had happened to have the course, one of the courses that I taught that she was consulting with. So that was the first time I was able to have a disciplinary writing consultant who also had experience with the content in that particular course, which was interesting and of course beneficial. And then I had my most recent experience this spring. So that's about 5. What I try to do with the disciplinary writing consultants is cultivate a sense in them that they can tell me where the bottlenecks are occurring with our students in ways that I can't find out for a variety of reasons. I think one of those reasons is that, you know, I'm a 50+ white guy with authority in the front of the classroom. They're not necessarily going to tell me where they're struggling. Whereas they might tell a student that they see as maybe only a year or 2 ahead of them, a kind of a peer who just is a tiny little bit older. And so my writing consultants get more out of the descriptions of struggles that students might be having. So I think that that's pretty useful. And again, since I'm able to, I don't know if groom's the right word, but prepare them for my expectations, to talk about my expectations. And in the case of a few of them, have those consultants who have already had my courses and seen how I commented on their papers with a kind of experience that they can then turn around as they help writers work on my papers. Another reason that I think that the consultants have, I don't know, extra access to the bottlenecks is that they're closer in time to the moment when they kind of discovered, if there's an aha moment for essay writing, I'm not sure, but they're closer in time to those kinds of struggles, and I think can relate better to the students than I can, who are having various kinds of struggles, sometimes with the content, sometimes with the format of the writing. I think that in many ways they're often able, more able than I am, to help them get through some of those, get them past some of those hurdles. So those are some of the things that I think that they automatically bring that add value to the experience of my courses. Another benefit that I think is associated with this program, something that I've enjoyed dearly, is the value of dialogue with another person working on writing with my students. I'll just share a couple of kind of categories of example. One is that as students get ready to submit, as we're approaching a deadline for a paper, and these are, I don't know, 5 to 6 page essays that they should be working on at least a week in advance of the deadline. And so some of the students are working on them at least a week in advance of the deadlines, and will use some of that time to set up a meeting with the disciplinary writing consultant. And at the brainstorm stage, they'll be talking about how they're thinking about putting this paper together. Well, when I talk with my disciplinary writing consultants in the midst of that process, I can find out where the headaches are, what students aren't getting, how they're not understanding the question, or something like that. And this makes it possible for me to engage in my writer's workshop, which I hold a few days before the paper is due, as a kind of last intervention on my part to help them understand the nature of historical interpretation and the format of writing that we're asking them to do. I can address some of those concerns a couple of days before the paper is due. I realize that that's not in time for many of them, but I also think that it happens to be in time for some of them. So I think it's a valuable moment for me to have with them that I didn't have unless I happen to have that student come to my office during office hours and say, this is the problem I'm having with this paper. And for you professors understand, that doesn't happen often enough. They're not always willing to come and talk to you like that. So having a disciplinary writing consultant work through that with me is a major benefit. Another kind of unexpected benefit that I've enjoyed from the dialogue with the disciplinary writing consultants, the regular dialogue. We have weekly or bi-weekly meetings to find out how things are going. In the process of doing that, I feel more than comfortable. I actually enjoy trying to unpack my understanding of how the content is supposed to be engaged to respond to the questions that I ask my students to answer with their essays. And in the process of that, and this is especially important for the disciplinary writing consultants that haven't had my courses, I need to tell them a little bit about, okay, here are the obvious kinds of contributors to an answer like this. Here are the places where students are going to find evidence for it. And quite often, they're the ones sort of reminding the students that, oh, have you thought about Robespierre for this particular answer? I think he would be useful, something like that. And on one occasion, I'll just share this quick anecdote. I was explaining to one of my first disciplinary writing consultants who was working with me on a second course that I remained kind of dumbfounded that in a course where I was teaching about the emergence of nationalism in the 19th century, and I teach European history, modern European history. So I'm talking about the emergence of nation states and nationalism in the 19th century. And in the midst of all of that, we read and talk about Karl Marx and Marxism. Marx was a sharp critic of nationalism. In fact, he thought it was a kind of bourgeois propaganda. For those of you who are Marxists, you know what I'm talking about, that convinces the working class to go along with the bourgeoisie who are controlling their labor because they happen to be a part of the same nationality. And so we spend a day talking about that stuff. And I commented to this writing consultant that I so rarely saw them pick up that kind of juicy subtopic to deal with in their nationalism papers. And I speculated it's because they don't quite see how it fits, or they weren't too comfortable with the material. And she said, because not only because she was a trained disciplinary writing consultant, although that helped, but also because she was a professional writing and rhetoric major, she said, why not do a low stakes short write on it at the end of class and call it exit notes and ask them a sharp question that will tee them up to use that material in the paper that they finally do. And I say, well, I would love to do that all the time, but I don't have time to do that. She said, that's what I'm here for. And so I had this kind of low stakes mini assignment at the end of class. It only took 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. And it was one of the, billable hours that she was able to use to read them and provide light feedback. But it more importantly gave the students an opportunity to try to write about a specific question that was a building block to something that they could use in the essay. And of course, subsequently, I got to see more Marx in an essay about nationalism than I had in the past. And that was extremely valuable. So that was worth the price of admission, I want to say, but that's a major benefit. One more benefit of the program that I want to mention, this has to do with faculty collaboration. These are the periodical meetings that the directors make us do. That sounded harsh. No, I am actually pleased to do them. Thanks for paying us a little bit, but it's an opportunity to hear what 4 or 5 other of my colleagues are doing with their disciplinary writing consultants. And also secondarily, it's an opportunity to find out what faculty in other disciplines think writing is all about and what they do with writing and how it works in their courses. So that's more than edifying. It's a set of references that make transfer possible, because now I know who does what in what other courses, and once in a while I can make those kinds of connections with my students. But also I find out how they're thinking about the way to use disciplinary writing consultants, which varies a little bit from the way that I use my disciplinary writing consultants. And that's without judgment. It's just interesting to hear more references about how that works. And that relates to my final point, which addresses one of the challenges, and I called it access and availability. Because one of the comments that I've heard, and I felt it too, but I've never had the guts to say it, is that when you experience the benefit of a program like this that you can't do every semester, it feels like a little bit of a drawback when you go back to teach the same course without a disciplinary writing consultant. And that's not how we all tend to work, if I may generalize. Once we find a benefit, we want to keep it, right? You want to, if something works, you try to maintain it. And I heard one of my colleagues say in one of these meetings, was it this spring, Julia? I don't know how I could teach this course without a disciplinary writing consultant. And the fact is the Writing Center doesn't have the resources to make that available for that particular faculty every time they happen to teach the course, probably. And they certainly don't have the opportunity to do that for all of the courses. So it's just, it's a good thing. And so the only challenge is how that we can't share it universally, that's all. I'll stop there. Happy to take questions when this is over.
So I'm Jessie Moore. I direct the Center for Engaged Learning, which is a interdisciplinary research center and international research center. I emphasize both of those points because some of what I'll be sharing is not specific to writing or even necessarily WAC, but I think that it offers a model that could be scaled down at other institutions to facilitate some really interesting collaborations around research. So the Center for Engaged Learning was founded officially in 2012, which, if you were paying attention to dates earlier, was just before the Writing Excellence Initiative. And the two key things that connect me to this session are the research seminars that have focused on writing transfer related topics. And those actually bookended the Writing Excellence Initiative, with one running 2011 to 2013 before the Center for Engaged Learning was even officially founded, and then one following on the end of the Writing Excellence Initiative, in large part because the WEI had built a culture around writing that allowed me to make a case for doing another research seminar on writing. So what am I even talking about when I mention research seminars? Our signature program in the Center for Engaged Learning is to host multi-year, multi-institutional, and international research seminars. We start a new one each year, so there are constantly 3 running at any given time. And each one has co-leaders who help manage that individual research seminar and help facilitate research collaborations by participants who have applied to participate. So typically 24 to 30 spots are available in each research seminar, and our applications have always been competitive. Mike was actually a participant in one of the non-writing related ones, so he can answer any participant related questions later. Julia and Paula are both co-leaders, as you can see, of the 2019-2021 research seminar on writing beyond university. This is really one of our signature programs, and so I'm going to take just a few minutes to unpack what it is that our research seminars look like and talk a little bit about how they might be scaled down at other institutions. I'll say that the reason I say scale down is that our particular model is fairly costly. I frequently get questions of where did we get the research money for it? Is it grant funded? Is it externally funded by a foundation? And it's not. It actually is an institutional commitment to research on teaching and learning, in line with our institution's commitment to engaged learning and the scholarship of teaching and learning. So we have the opportunity to do it at the scale that we planned and envisioned, but I recognize that some of the things that I'm sharing may not seem particularly feasible in other contexts. So Paula, if you could change to the next slide. Thank you. So the research seminars, as I said, are multi-institutional. We invite applications for each research seminar. Typically, the call for application goes out in August or September. And if we get multiple applications from any one institution, we're often looking at who is one individual from that institution who can then join the research seminar participants as a unit. We're trying to facilitate multi-institutional research question development and research planning. And that's often easier if folks have not come with a preconceived institutional research plan or priority. But that doesn't mean that folks are disconnected from their home institutions. So the dual directional arrows there are really intended to indicate that we encourage participants to think about how they can extend their multi-institutional research associated with the research seminar, by inviting participation from others at their home campuses in ways that align with their group's work. So we invite applications, we select 20 to 30 participants, and then we have to think about, okay, what are we doing together under these shared themes? So Paula, if you'd advance to the next slide. We, from those 20 to 30 folks, invite folks to form smaller teams of 4 to 6 members who are focused on a sub-question under our shared umbrella. So for example, when we were looking at writing transfer in 2011 to 2013, we had teams that were looking at writing about writing. We had teams that were looking at teaching for transfer as two distinct pedagogies that might facilitate writing transfer within an institution. In a more recent seminar on Writing Beyond the University, we've had teams that are looking at self-sponsored writing and teams that have looked at writing in the professions and what alumni are drawing on to be successful in that post-college setting as writers. But in all of those cases, bringing that research back to a shared umbrella theme to think about what we can learn across teams. So here the dual directional arrows are really trying to illustrate that while the research teams then form a question and develop a research plan, conduct their data, collect their data, analyze their data, what they're learning filters back to the larger group to enable us to make some broader claims about the topic. That often gets shared in a Elon statement on whatever the research seminar topic is, or in edited collections, special issues of journals, and so forth. One of the things that I want to highlight here is that we also try to be multidisciplinary in these research seminars. And that's an aspect that I think could scale easily at other institutions. With the Writing Beyond the University, for instance, we are not just inviting the participation of writing studies scholars. We have law faculty, we have student life faculty, members, colleagues participating, and about really almost 10 different disciplines represented in addition to writing studies. And that allows us to think a little bit more broadly about what's happening, not just within a single discipline in terms of engaged learning, but across disciplines as well. So I think that that's a part of the model that could be scaled if you have, whether it's a Center for Advancement of Teaching and Learning or federal, sorry, it's later in the evening here and I think it's showing, or a research program that can facilitate collaborations. Inviting some of those different disciplinary perspectives can be helpful to really think about what are we learning that's applicable beyond one department or one program. The multi-institutional piece, in our case, also lets us make claims and generalizations that are not bound to a single institution type. The example I often give is that in the Writing About Writing group in the 2011 to 2013 research seminar, in the first year of data collection, they were seeing some things that were working really well at one institution, but not working well at other institutions. And so in the second year, they played with their strategies to think about how they could adapt it for the different institution type. And then we're able to share more about what works not at just one specific institution type, but across several institution types. So that's the value in the scale that we're able to bring. But the multiple disciplinary lens also brings a lot of value to the research seminars. Paula, if you could advance to the next one. This is another piece that I think is definitely scalable. We are operating as a central hub or a facilitator or a coordinator. We are not driving the research question beyond the broad theme that we introduce. And so it's not us saying, here's the research question implemented at your institutions. It's people coming together and thinking through what are the shared interests that we have and how can we use those shared interests to form some shared research questions and methods. We are able to make it a bit like a research camp. That's a term that came out of the very first research seminar. And it's something that as we studied this process, we've tried to repeat that feel because it's not just the formal interactions in the research seminars, but also the informal interactions that have really facilitated some of the richness of the research plans, of kind of breakthroughs in data analysis and things like that, as well as networking. So if you're thinking about scaling this for your institution, think about not only the formalized parts of the program, but where you might make some informal spaces for folks to just kind of talk across groups, talk across projects, or just take a break and maybe have that breakthrough moment when they're not actively thinking in formalized activities. So I won't say more about that particular piece right now, but I'll ask Paula to go ahead and advance to what I believe is my last slide. This has led to, or almost last slide, this has led to substantial outcomes for our participants. Of course, there are the typical outcomes like, as I mentioned, journal articles, edited collections. You can see along the top there are covers from several of the books that have come out of the research seminars. But there are also institutional outcomes, and our colleague Tim Peoples and I have been studying these, and I think that they're in some ways far more interesting. The academic outcomes lead to promotion possibilities, tenure possibilities. They have definite merit, but the institutional outcomes have led to changes in programs, to curricular revision, to new faculty and staff development initiatives on campuses. And so that's a really interesting impact that I think as we're thinking about these types of research collaborations, we need to make note of as well. And then of course, there are also personal outcomes. A lot of participants have told us that it really developed a new professional network for them. So in my last slide, I'll bring it back a little bit more to the focus of our IWAC session tonight. And just as a more specific example, this is, again, the most recent research seminar. We had participants representing 32 institutions and all the countries listed, forming 6 multi-institutional and multidisciplinary research teams. This is required and really benefited from the collaboration between the Center for Engaged Learning and the Center for Writing Excellence. Other research seminars have collaborated with Undergraduate Research Program, our Center for Advancement Teaching and Learning, which is distinct from our Center for Engaged Learning, our Center for Research on Global Engagement. So again, this is not just one center trying to facilitate this research, even though we're the research center. It's the partnerships with other centers that have made it possible. And I could talk on and on about the research seminars. They're a key part of my life, but I will pause there and let us open it up for questions. As we do that, I think you'll see us emphasizing we're really interested in the collaborative aspect and the ways that we're working across disciplines within our own institution, and in my case, other institutions. But we'd love to hear what questions we've raised for you and what you're thinking might be applicable from these examples that we've shared at your own institutions. So feel free, if you have a comment or thought, to unmute, or you can put something in the chat and we'll filter it from there too. I'm wondering if there are things that you heard that you might want to try at your own institution, or if there are questions you have for any of us that for clarifying information that might help you think about how you might adapt these.
Nope, no questions. Thank you, Jessie. We have some prompts there if people want to reflect, but people can type. I'm not sure if people can unmute themselves. If they might have to ask.
Mm-hmm.
People should be able to unmute.
Thank you.
I have a question. So you were talking, Paula, in particular about the QEP and It's been my experience in my institutional context when, we're not in SACS, but when a strategic plan, for example, kind of runs its course and a new one starts, there's, it's kind of like out with the old and in with the new, and some of the support for the initiative kind of goes away despite our best efforts to kind of keep it going. So I'm interested in hearing maybe a little bit about just, what happened in that transition at the end of the QEP beyond everyone already at that point had those disciplinary writing plans or whatever you're calling them in your context. But yeah, if you just maybe speak to that a little bit.
Sure, that's a great question, and my colleagues might have things to add as well because they were involved in other ways. But Elon really did a nice job as an institution. We spent a year talking about topics, and we had thousands, and then we narrowed it to 100, then 50, and 20, then 8 white papers. So we do feel like we had really big buy-in because writing, there was no contest when people voted. It was off the charts, the winner. And our plan involved, as it was supposed to, everybody across the university, and we committed significant resources. So we redesigned the Center for Writing Excellence and made it more accessible for multimedia writing. We were, as Jessie mentioned, very fortunate. There was a lot of money contributed to this, and we still have all that budget. So all the money for the workshops, for the grants, for the summer writing institutes, for the disciplinary writing consultants, none of that money has been taken away. And I think what's really important too is that we built in the writing outcomes as part of, departments built that into their regular assessment. So it wasn't the one and done that can happen. Like, okay, it's writing intensive until you forget about it. I mean, they have to address these writing outcomes every couple of years. And then the other thing is that Elon is still very focused on teaching. You have to be a good teacher, and faculty really do care. I mean, it's so fun talking with engineering and physics faculty about writing. And I don't think that would happen at institutions that weren't as focused on teaching. The different kinds of institutions. So part of it is our own culture. I think we're really fortunate. So I think that, that stress, we have to write our writing outcomes before the 5 years is up, that's gone, but I still see lots of involvement. We didn't have resources taken away. Perhaps my colleagues have other ideas to share.
I would just emphasize that it really is a testament to a couple things that Paula and Julia did, and as part of developing that culture around writing, that people think of it as really a benefit to be able to participate in the Summer Writing Institute. They're excited about that as an ongoing thing. Paula and Julia collected a lot of data to demonstrate that the work was showing improvements in student learning and campus culture, and have continued to collect that data and have involved campus partners. So not only do they have data to show the effectiveness of the initiative, but they also have campus partners who are now allies in suggesting what should be sustained and in defending the budgetary decisions with it. It's so that campus culture piece, but also then the research, their own assessment of the process has really helped foster the continuation of it as well.
Thank you.
Jessie, thank you.
I can add just one more anecdote from the discipline of history, where the QEP was not as challenging for us as it was for other disciplines, because we thought we had fairly clear writing expectations across our discipline. But in the process of going through that, we kind of built an assessment model that, as Paula said, is a thing that we continue to use. And so there's that kind of sustain that happens because of that. And in the process of doing that, and as we assess and try to, reinforce things in our curriculum, I think it's brought our discipline, which has very different sets of topics, kind of centered on a common set of skills, most of which are writing, I have to say, that we now understand how each other talks about them. And we are sort of more obviously pulling in the same direction. So transfer across our courses within the discipline is, I think, much more likely under those circumstances, because we're more familiar now with the terrain of the assessment modules. It's not just something that we picked some poor sap to do in our department, as I remember it happening when I first arrived here at Elon. It's now something that we're all kind of committed to. And so I see that as one of the things that has kind of reverberated since the end of the QEP.
Mike, may I ask you a question? You talked about how the disciplinary writing consultants helped your students and helped you out. What did you learn? I mean, I know you said that once the consultant developed this low stakes writing assignment that exit notes that you still use. What did they teach you? Did they teach you anything? Because we always like to talk about the disciplinary writing consultants. Yes, the consultants can have that student perspective and they can bring that to you, but then you're also teaching them things, but they also have that kind of writerly knowledge from working in the writing center that might.
Yeah, I think that, you know, that anecdote touches on maybe the best example of something that I learned, which is that rather than seeing class time as a time for presentation of content only, which maybe is what I was thinking of it as up until then, more and help me think about it as an opportunity to practice thinking about some of the concepts, some of which are difficult, at a moment when they're much more likely to be able to make something of it, rather than wait 2 weeks until the paper comes around and they'll think of something like, I imagine them going through something like, well, I only sort of got marks, so I'm not going to even bother going to try to put it in this paper because I've got other things that I think I understood better. But if they've practiced writing at the moment when they sort of had some clarity in the classroom, and they've got it back, you know, they have it in their notes. It's an exit note that had some comments on it. That's something that they can then say, okay, maybe I can try to put this in here. So for me, it was about I suppose it's a writing to learn issue, right? That by articulating a response to a totally loaded question that I built for them, they came closer to a point where they could feel comfortable employing it in an argument. If you pressed me, I could probably think of some other examples, but to me, that was a biggie. That's something that I use more often, and it's diversified my classroom. It's made it my classes tend to be binary. There's the discussion of the readings part where the students are centralized, and then there's presentation of materials where the professor is the centerpiece, and having more activities. And this is something I've always seen in my student comments, like, how about some group work, or how about some other stuff going on in this classroom? So
that makes me very happy. I think it might make others happy hearing that a faculty member thought, let's write more in class. I think, Leslie, you had a question or a comment?
It's a comment, actually. I just wanted to thank you all for just talking about what you've done. And I also thank you, Jessie, for pointing out, like, okay, we have all these resources, and so we can just make all these things happen, which is fantastic. But what you made me think of, I've been talking about in some other panels that I would like to, our university just created a new way to approve writing intensive courses. Basically, we already had the courses, but they'd been ignored for, over a decade. And so now we have this new way to approve the classes, but there's no assessment involved with the classes at all. And so I'm trying to think about, how can I not just get some kind of voluntary assessment thing going on with the departments, but how can I also maybe reward the departments that decide to collect some data. And one of the things that you guys have pointed out is I do work with our faculty development center. I do work with them, but I haven't asked them, hey, what if I did some kind of like one of these seminars, right? Or a learning community about writing outcomes, things like that, spread it out over a semester with some departments who want to try it. So I just want to say thank you for pointing out that some of these collaborations maybe could make things a little bit easier for me, because I'm the only person in the writing across the curriculum program. So thanks very much.
Thank you. You need partners and collaborators. So
Yes.
that's exciting to hear. Thank you all for joining us. I think you have our names and emails. If you have further questions, we'd be happy to speak with you. Please just reach out. Thank you. It's nice to see people.